everyone, Michael Bretti here from Bretti Musical Instruments. I've got a brand new inline ocarina unveiling for the month of February for this year. This is a brand new inline size that I have not unveiled before, and this turns out that this is also the biggest ocarina that I've made to date. So without further ado, I'd like to give a first look and listen to batch number 21 of wooden ocarinas from Bretti Musical Instruments. So over the course of this video, I'm going to be diving into the build, take a look at some of the background and history behind it, the wood selection, some of the features and characteristics of these ocarinas, give some sound samples, and then a song demo at the end. So this ocarina batch consists of two ocarinas, serial numbers 42 and 43. Now you'll notice from prior recent unveilings that these serial numbers are actually lower than where I currently am. I'm currently in the mid 50s now, and I have several dozen more ocarinas in the works. So these ones are actually a little bit earlier serial number. That's really because I had finished these ocarinas months ago, back in September, but I had so many other builds, especially custom work, that I had to get through first. The scheduling just worked out that I couldn't really unveil them until I had an open spot for this particular batch. So these ocarinas are base B3 ocarinas, so a step lower than the prior unveiled base C4 ocarinas. So again, these are the largest, the deepest ocarinas that I have made to date. And these really evolved along with the base C4 build. And to give some kind of historical context with this build, the whole base evolution of my ocarinas really came about from some custom inquiries for several base C4s, which I had already unveiled in several videos before. So through the course of that, I had to develop out the actual base size that would be used before I started cutting into the woods for the custom builds. And in that process, I had stepped down from the tenors, which I had already developed out, to the basses. So I wanted to, hit the bass D, bass C, and then I had plans for bass B and bass A. It turns out that I kind of initially overshot my prediction for the bass C4. So I had thought that this size would have ended up working out for the bass C4, but it was actually deeper. So it turned out that it worked out really nicely for the B3 size. So I ended up developing these out before the bass C4s. And then I kind of undershot on the next one, and those ended up being tenor E flat 4s. And then I had to bounce around a little bit before I settled in on the bass C4 size, which gave me the right combination of breath pressure and tone and fingerhole size, which was a particular challenge going up in size with bigger ocarinas like this to balance all those things out to still make it playable across the full range. So these were developed out before the C4s, and this really evolved from that development. So now kind of getting into the actual ocarinas themselves, I'm going to give a first look at the first one in this batch. So this is number 42. So these ocarinas are both made from a set of 3 woods. So the first wood is a beautiful piece of ribbon stripe sapele, and I have used this wood on a prior build, my very first base C4 build, which had a purple heart stripe, a paduk top, and an aromatic cedar mouthpiece. So they both share this same ribbon stripe sapele body. I think ribbon stripe sapele works really nicely for especially deeper bass ocarinas because it's not a super heavy wood. It's kind of a medium range weight and density wood, so it makes these ocarinas actually still quite light. You have that really beautiful ribbon striping going down vertically down the body, which is really accentuated with just this really massive body. You can tell these are pretty big ocarinas. These are almost a foot in length total. So getting up there in size, but you have that really nice iridescence to the body. Again, sapele is, I'd say, very similar to mahogany in terms of characteristics, tonal qualities, looks. They're often can be substituted for one another. So the sapele is a really nice classic brown with a really nice iridescence to the grain with the ribbon striping. Next, for the top of the ocarina, we have a really beautiful piece of curly blue gum eucalyptus. I got this board quite a while back, and I just didn't know what to pair it with. It has just this really, again, beautiful iridescence to it, kind of running across horizontally, almost like pockled and checkered in there, to make this kind of nice look to the grain. It's a nice golden brown type grain, and for the longest time I really didn't know what ocarina I wanted to pair it with. And then looking at the ribbon striped sapele, I thought that having kind of a very similar matching color palette between the light golden brown of the eucalyptus and kind of the little bit darker medium graham cracker brown of the sapele would pair kind of nicely together. So you can kind of see very similar type look. So a little bit different, a little bit lighter on the top, but it gives kind of a little bit nice contrast while keeping that same light brown type theme to it. You can also see, the iridescence in that sapele is just really beautiful. It moves across the wood, every angle you look. So the top, I think, really is brought out really nicely for the size. And one of the things that I really like about the bass sizes is that you have a lot more real estate on the instrument itself to show off really amazing, really figured woods. So eucalyptus is a really hard, really heavy, really dense wood. And I'm actually looking forward to building a solid eucalyptus ocarina set eventually one day. I think it'll be really cool. I've got some really amazing figured eucalyptus pendants in the works. So just a really, really stunning wood, very stable, again, very heavy and dense, just really beautiful figuring all around. Next, for the mouthpiece, we have kind of that classic aromatic cedar mouthpiece. So you can see kind of similar for a lot of standard batch ocarinas that I've done. Before I get into the sound of this, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the features of the ocarina. Because this is a bass B3, it is a bigger ocarina. By nature, some of the finger holes are going to be larger. Now, I took a lot of effort in balancing out the breath pressure versus the finger hole size, because I found that for the basses, and especially for the bass C4 in particular, if the breath pressure is not just right, the last two holes, so the left pinky and the right thumb, blow up really massively. So I have to really kind of control that breath pressure and that breath curve to a very exact degree to keep these two finger holes from getting any larger. Now, these are very big holes still for the pinky and the thumb. You can tell the thumb hole is quite large. I think that's that's probably at least a 16 millimeter hole. It's very big. You have to use your whole thumb pad to cover that. For the pinky, this is actually almost like what you might see for an Italian style transverse ocarina, where they have a very large pinky hole on the last note. This is also a pretty big one. I think this is about a 13 millimeter diameter pinky hole. So these ocarinas are definitely not for someone with very small hands, very narrow fingers. Even myself, I don't have very wide fingers. I have pretty narrow fingers. And I can just get this sealed with my pinky, kind of putting it down into the hole. It does take practice getting it sealed right. So these are a little bit more challenging. It's much better for people with larger hands. And that's just kind of the nature of going up with these larger bass ocarinas. This is really the largest size hole I think is feasible for covering for the pinky without having to start getting into mechanisms to help on that. And I do definitely plan on going much lower. I want to hit bass G3. I want to hit some really big contrabass ocarinas. You know, one of my kind of goals or dream stretch ocarinas is to make, you know, a really big wooden contrabass ocarina, which I just have not seen before. I've seen some massive contrabass clay ocarinas, but I do want to make a full range, really large contrabass inline ocarina. I still want them, again, to have the full range. So this also has the full 19 note range, which is kind of an extended range for inline ocarinas. So the range of these is not sacrificed at all. A lot of makers really restrict the range of these ocarinas for kind of bass, especially bass wooden ocarinas. So I've worked at keeping the fingerhole size down to a minimum. It's still a little bit big, but it is playable. It is manageable with practice. So you can actually get the full range for this size. And I do plan on, again, if I ever hit those contrabass ocarinas, I'm going to have to really explore some other techniques in getting that range. But I do think it's achievable, and I think it would really be cool to have some really big ocarinas. So this is kind of just the gateway into even bigger, even deeper inline ocarinas, which just hasn't really been tapped into before. So now, to give a sound sample of this ocarina, I'm going to just play up and down the scale and some improvisation. So this is what number 42 sounds like. So these bass ocarinas are what you expect for a bass ocarina. Really warm, has a very earthy, woody tone. Because the sound hole has to be a little bit bigger, the windway has to be a little bit bigger. By nature, these bass ocarinas are a little bit more breathy than my smaller size ocarinas. They still have a really nice clarity to the top end. So just because they're a little bit more breathy does not make it a bad thing. Breathiness is actually pretty standard and typical in ocarinas, and it varies to a degree, but definitely across the range, you're going to find that bass ocarinas, larger ocarinas in general, are going to be just a little bit more breathy just because of the dynamics of how the windway has to be shaped. That being said, playing up the scale is really effortless. It's really easy. It takes a little bit more air than my other ocarinas. The windway is more open, but it plays really easily up the range. You do not have to push the high notes at all. They play very cleanly, very clearly, with, I'd just say, medium medium amount of breath pressure. So very nicely balanced ocarina. Now, something to consider that I'm going to talk about getting into the other one is the finger hole spacing. For this ocarina, this actually uses the standard finger hole spacing that my other ocarinas use. So my kind of tenor ocarinas, that size. So this is actually closer spacing. So even though this pinky hole is a little bit bigger, the spacing is actually closer. So someone with smaller hands, as long as your fingers are not too thin, too small, and narrow, you can actually get the spread of this very comfortably. This is a very comfortable ocarina to play. Again, even though it's a bigger ocarina, it's very light. The finger spread is very easy, and that's one thing that I really wanted with these ocarinas, is to still have a balanced grip that's easy to play. You'll also notice that, like all my other ocarinas, the hole at the bottom here is very close to the bottom, and when you see me playing, you'll notice that as I go up the scale, I start to support the ocarina here with my pinky. So as I'm going up and I'm opening up the holes, I'm balancing with my mouth and this right pinky. And that's kind of by design for all my ocarinas. So it still works exactly the same with the bass ocarinas. I think having a lighter ocarina really helps, and having the finger holes down lower helps shift that center of gravity down lower, so it's much easier and more comfortable to balance as you're going up and down the scale. Now moving into the second ocarina of the batch, this is ocarina number 43. So jumping right into the difference between the two, while number 42 has a very close spread that is pretty much identical to the spread of my tenor ocarinas, this ocarina actually I kind of explored a much wider grip. So you'll notice that the finger holes on this are much wider. And if I put these two kind of side by side here, you can see this one, the finger holes are a little bit closer and to the bottom. This one, the finger holes are a little bit wider on the left hand side, and that was really, again, to kind of explore. I was exploring the difference between close finger holes, more wide grip, trying to really hone it in for the bass C4. I actually ended up finding a nice balance between these two, so kind of an in-between medium range for the finger hole spread. So for any large bass B3s and C4s going forward, they're going to have kind of that balanced spread between kind of these two extremes. This spread is not like super big or anything. It's still pretty comfortable, but it just gives a little bit more space for somebody with larger hands who might like that larger spread. Especially on this side, on the right hand side, the spread is much more noticeably larger, but it's still comfortable for people with long fingers or with a wider spread in their grip. For custom ocarinas, especially for the bigger bass size, because there's so much more extra room, I do actually have the flexibility in kind of customizing that spread. So if you like the basses, but you want a closer spread, I can do that. If you're looking at a bass, but you want a much wider spread, there's definitely a lot more room to do that. So there is room to play around with this, whereas the tenors and the altos, I'm really kind of more constrained because they're much shorter ocarinas than these. So kind of going over the woods, again, we have the first wood, which is that beautiful, just really nice graham cracker, iridescent, ribbon striped sapele. Going up and down, you have those dark bands and those light bands of iridescence contrasting with each other across the grain. Just really beautiful, clean clean look to the grain. You can see again that iridescent shine kind of moves around even on the sides. And then we have the curly blue gum eucalyptus top. Again, you have that really nice, almost checkered type curl to the top, which I think pairs and contrasts kind of nicely with the very long iridescence in the back. And then finally, you have that aromatic cedar mouthpiece. So I'm going to go up and down the scale on this one and give some improvisation to give an example of what this sounds like. So this is Ocarina number 43. So again, like the first ocarina, this ocarina has a little bit more airiness to it, but still very clean, rich tone to it, a lot of warmth, and still really nice clarity at the top. In terms of response, both of these ocarinas have pretty much identical breath pressure to them. The breath curves are really similar. I really can't tell much of a difference between either of these ocarinas. One thing I do want to mention is that I found with my ocarinas in particular, and with wooden ocarinas, they can be more sensitive to how you blow into them. And I have actually done a tutorial on kind of advanced tone control with the smaller A4, but these principles kind of extends towards all of them, and you can actually really hear that even with the bass ocarinas. So kind of the four main concepts to really getting a more rich and crisp tone with these ocarinas is holding at the proper angle, so not too vertical, not too horizontal. You kind of want to hold it at a nice even 45 degrees so you have that airflow going through, hitting that labium very straight and clean. Next, you're actually going to want to kind of drop and relax your jaw, kind of widen your oral cavity, almost as if you're singing like a deep, like kind of la type tone, like think like opera, for example, kind of more open mouth, rich tone to it. Relax your mouth. A lot of times I see in the ocarina community, people often say for ocarinas, if you want to get a crisper tone at the top, squeeze your lips together to focus the air. For my ocarinas, that's the exact opposite of what you want to do, because the windway is really optimized for a very clean laminar flow, and you can enhance that with how you blow into the ocarina. So by having kind of more open mouth, kind of relaxing and dropping your jaw, it moves your teeth, moves your tongue away from that inlet, and anything in front of that inlet for the windway is actually going to cause turbulence. So if you're squeezing your lips together, squeezing your teeth together and blowing, you're actually going to have more breathiness, more airiness than intended, because you're introducing that extra bit of turbulence into the ocarina. So by dropping your jaw again, and keeping your mouth a little bit more open as you play, you're going to start to get a cleaner tone. And this goes the same for all my ocarinas across the board. The second, the third kind of aspect is learning the proper breath curve. So every ocarina has the breath curve, and that just comes with practice. And the fourth and kind of final, really key aspect is very controlled breathing with your diaphragm. So instead of just kind of pushing with your lungs and breathing out kind of roughly, by kind of restricting your airflow in your diaphragm, kind of playing with a little bit of tension in your diaphragm, controlling it very cleanly and gently, while keeping that open mouth type structure, you can get a very clean, much richer sound to the tone. So as opposed to sounding a little bit rougher like this, I had my mouth closer together. I was kind of breathing with more my lungs, but again, drop the jaw, relax the mouth, control the breath with the diaphragm, and you can get a cleaner tone across the range, a little bit like this. So again, and I find with these ocarinas in particular, because of that diaphragm type technique, vibrato comes really naturally. So by practicing these methods, again, the way that I voice these and intend these ocarinas to be played is with this very specific type technique that really brings out the richness and clarity in the sound of the ocarina. So this goes again for all my ocarinas that I make, but you can definitely really hear the difference in good technique on the bass ocarinas. Kind of as a final note, again, that pinky hole and that thumb hole are a bit bigger. It does take a little bit of practice to get right. And then for the grip, I've found for myself kind of a little bit of an asymmetric grip. So on the left-hand side, kind of dropping the angle down to kind of lock that pinky in here. And then on the right-hand side, keeping it a little bit more up. So it's actually almost like you're holding a transverse ocarina. It's a little bit like that, where this hand is kind of angled this way, this hand is kind of angled this way. It translates very much similarly to this particular style of a little bit wider grip. So that kind of wraps up the general overview of these ocarinas. Now, for the song demo, I'm actually going to be doing something a little bit different. I've noticed a lot in various ocarina groups online. I've seen a number of times people asking, can the ocarina play Native American style music that you would hear on like a Native American style flute? And just by default, ocarinas are fully diatonic, fully chromatic. The standard kind of Native American style flute is tuned to a pentatonic minor scale, so you can absolutely play pentatonic minor on the ocarina, and it's kind of playing that Native American style flute improvisation on those flutes comes very naturally because you have the finger holes just for the pentatonic minor scale, so it's very easy, very effortless to play. But to get that same feel, you can absolutely get that with an ocarina. And one thing that I've found in particular is that wooden inlines, I feel can capture that essence a lot more, I think, than other types of ocarinas. First, you get the really rich warmth of the wood. Next, for inline ocarinas, they are less hollow sounding than transverse, and they are more kind of flute-like in the sense of a kind of traditional open bore flute in terms of the dynamics. So it's not as resonant and as hollow as a typical ocarina, but that inline characteristic dynamic, along with the wood characteristics of the tone, I think really lends itself nicely to that pentatonic minor type Native American flute style improvisation. And in fact, one of the very first instruments that I got when I first started getting into wooden flutes, world flutes, and everything was the Native American style flute. That was one of the flutes that really got me absolutely hooked on wooden instruments and really started my journey many years ago, I think back in middle school or early high school. So there are some interesting developments in the works in that regards. However, for this demo, I actually kind of want to demonstrate some of that Native American flute style sounding playing with the pentatonic minor scale on these bass wooden inlines. So please enjoy this kind of improvisation with the pentatonic minor scale in the style of Native American style flute. So that wraps up this edition of the batch 21 unveiling for the first ever batch of bass B3 ocarinas. So my largest ocarinas to date. These are serial numbers 42 and 43. Kind of touching up again on the prior performance. One thing that the bass ocarinas can leverage really strongly is the balance between, breathiness and clarity depending on the technique. And you'll probably have noticed in the last recording, I was switching between a little bit more clean technique, a little bit more vibrato, a little more push, a little bit more earthiness, breathiness to it. It has a little bit of that nice chirp that you can get to it, kind of similar to the Native American style flute. So for somebody who likes to improvise and play all sorts of music, obviously these ocarinas are fully capable of playing any music that any of my other ocarinas can play. They have the same range as full 11 hole transverse ocarina, except in that bass form factor. And with a little bit of practice, getting the finger hole placement down and everything becomes very natural, intuitive. It does take time. It does take practice, especially with these larger finger holes. But you can see with the accents and the ornaments that I was playing with this ocarina, the size really won't hinder you, especially with the weight, with the finger hole layout and everything. And I think they're fun. They're fun ocarinas to play. I really love bass ocarinas. I have some really exquisite woods that I've been saving, some really big, beautiful pieces of wood for some very rare, very specialty batch bass ocarinas that I think will be very exciting down the road. So if you like this development and you want to follow along more, you can check out all the ocarinas and information that I have available on the Bretti Musical Instruments website. So that's brettimusic.com. There's the YouTube channel here, which I post a number of videos and unveilings and demonstrations of all different types of instruments. Lots more instruments to come. And then there's the Bretti Musical Instruments Instagram, where I kind of give a little bit of behind the scenes, what's to come, new woods, new ocarinas in the works, kind of a look at what goes into these ocarinas, and then finally pictures and videos and general announcements on the Bretti Musical Instruments Facebook page. So with that, I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.